Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Swartwood here. Tonight, I am joined by a USA Today best-selling author of five novels, including her most recent novel, which just came out in paperback, Too Old for This. That's right, it's your favorite writer of mine, Samantha Downing. Samantha, how the heck are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. I am fine. Doing pretty well over here on the West Coast. We haven't gotten quite the streaks that everybody else has, so it's pretty mild. I
Yeah.
can't complain too much.
So when we spoke last, there was something I realized after the fact I had wanted to bring up and completely slipped my mind. How disappointed were you when you found out who Ellie Conway was? Do you remember
Ellie
this?
Conway?
I remember on Twitter. This was back in the
Apparently
Twitter
I
days. I
don't.
remember, I remember you had posted this story. I think it was the first time I had heard about it, which was the reason it stuck in my head, or
Okay.
in my head. There was
I have
a
a terrible
story
memory, so.
about this author who had this book coming out, this Ellie Conway, and there was already a movie in the
Oh, right,
works,
right,
and
right.
and you were like, "This is a fascinating story. Who is this Ellie Conway?" And then we find out. It's just this character in this movie, and they
Yes.
do kind of like
Yeah.
not even a
It,
novelization of the movie, but it was one of those like, like kind of
yeah,
like the
was
Richard
it
Castle or whatever from the Castle series type thing.
right? Was it the redheaded actress? Was it Amy Adams
Yes,
or
it was
Jessica Chastain
Ron
or
Howard's daughter.
oh,
What's her
Bryce
face?
Bryce Dallas
Bryce
Howard?
Dallas Howard. Yes, she
Right,
starred.
and that
She was the
that was Ellie
character, and
Conway.
yes.
Yes,
So do you remember? Because I remember
yes.
that was like a big like there was this like it was like oh like or like this book hasn't even been published yet and they're already making this big
It
movie about it, and it's like what is this? And then when
was
it kind of came out what
Argyle,
it was like
wasn't it
okay,
Argyle?
Argyle, yes.
Yes, that was quite a hype train that they put up there. It's
It's very
kind of
hyped.
like, yeah, it was. I feel like everybody's always trying to recreate the classic ingenious marketing plan of Blair Witch Project, which was
Yeah.
so brilliant at the time, so many years ago, and really captured everybody's attention for a minute and made everybody go see that movie.
Yeah. Because I mean, it does happen where books before they get published might have film, TV interest, but especially nowadays, it's the whole process is so long because it's not like a studio typically is snapping it up. It has, a producer has to put together a package and then it becomes this whole thing and it could take forever. That's why oftentimes stuff, comes out or is made like a decade after the movie or I mean the book comes out.
Oh yeah. And
Um,
especially now with everything splintered into streaming networks, it's not like having a giant movie being made and put it in the box office and everybody goes to the theater to see it. It could be released in
no,
any
I
number
mean
of
The
places.
Housemaid is a recent one where it was a big movie actually, but most times I
Right.
feel like stuff that gets adapted, half the time people aren't even aware that it's based on a book.
Yeah.
Um, where like May Cobb, obviously the Hunting Wives, they clearly she benefited from that, but I feel like like I don't know. Back in the day, like Fight Club gets made into a movie, and then all of a sudden Chuck Palahniuk becomes a New York Times bestselling author. Like that does not really happen anymore when a lot of
Mhm.
these books get made and streaming. And depending on the streaming service, most people might not even see it. There's probably hardly any type of bump in terms of sales. So it is kind of crazy,
Absolutely.
how it's great to have something out there to make sure, more and more people are aware of it. But sometimes it, as an author, it doesn't really benefit the author as it would have maybe like a decade ago.
I agree. Yeah. There are lots of people that will see a little thriller series on Netflix or wherever and have no idea that it was a book at all. I still meet people that don't know that Carolyn Kepnes wrote the You series and before it became that blockbuster TV series. And just every focus is very not on one thing the way it used to be. We all used to watch the same networks and we all used to go to the same theater and watch a movie in whatever the big movie was that week or what have you. And now there's 18 different streaming networks and they all have original content and it's impossible to keep up with which ones come from books and which ones don't.
Yeah. Well, what have you been watching recently? Usually I wait just till the end for recommendations, but like, is there anything that you've watched or have
Trying to think of what I've watched recently. I did just watch. Oh, I watched the new Harlan Coben one. I Will Find You
yeah.
on Netflix. Um, that's the probably the most recent one that I watched.
I did
And
not watch that one. I read
yeah,
it, or actually technically I guess I listened to the audiobook, which I still feel is considered reading, but it was okay. I thought I don't know. It was like, is this guy how does this guy who supposedly murdered his son end up in the jail run by a family member? You know?
yeah.
Like that was kind of like okay. I don't know. It was one of those.
I
Which
think
I
it's
don't
just
mind
not so easy to
suspending
break.
disbelief, but at the same time,
Yeah,
it's like, come on.
I think it's just not so easy to break out of jail. You have to
Well, that
have
was the other
help
thing too.
somewhere.
It's like,
So
oh, okay, I'm
yeah.
interested in how's this going to break out of jail, and then how he got, or at least how it was in the book, and I'm assuming it's the same in the show. It was just like,
But all of these
okay,
things, but everything in thriller books is extraordinary. I can't, there are not many thriller books that I would look at and say, oh, that's totally realistic from beginning to end. I can completely see this. The whole concept of it is that these are extraordinary things,
yeah,
and that happen to people or that people get themselves into, or extraordinary crimes that happen that we don't can't it couldn't really happen in real life. And at the same time, you have crazy things actually happening in real life that you're thinking, if I wrote this, nobody would ever believe it if I wrote it. And so it's a weird, that's kind of the art of writing as I look at it, is to write it in a way where people just suspend disbelief and jump on the train and say, okay, I'm just going to go on this ride and I'm here for it. And I think it's the same is true for movies and TV shows and what have you. I'm not looking for a realistic depiction of life.
yeah. That's interesting. I do feel like if you write something very grounded, no one would probably care. But you have to write something that's a little bit more over the top, but not too over the top, where people would say it's ridiculous, but kind of, bordering on ridiculous. Because sometimes you might see or read something and you're just like, what, what? But people love it.
And people are always also looking for the twists. And real life doesn't often have twists. Um, and sometimes it's exactly as it appears. And I remember when that young woman, Gabby Petito, went missing, and she had gone off with her boyfriend they were living in the van, and he came back alone after camping. And it seemed very clear to me what happened. Oh no, he didn't come back. He disappeared, and he was found. He committed suicide. And it seemed very clear to me what happened. Clearly had killed her and then had committed suicide. And there were no twists in this case. But I think people kept looking for the twist, thinking this had to be something different. And it turned out to be exactly what it looked like. He had killed her in anger or what have you, and then committed suicide because of it. And that's a gruesome story to talk about in this live stream, but sometimes the story is exactly how it looks.
Yeah. Like that Samantha Guthrie story with her mom. That's terrible.
Oh yeah, yes. Oh, Savannah
Or
Guthrie.
Savannah
Yeah,
Guthrie, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that one, the ransom notes were kind of
It feels like,
random,
and
I
again,
guess. I don't know.
I haven't been paying too close attention, but it sounds like her mother died not long after being abducted, and they still don't know what happened to her body. Yeah, it's just it's crazy. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting in terms of twists. I don't know if we had discussed this before. I had a conversation recently with Riley Sager where we were talking about. I feel like some of our peers really cheat when it comes to their twists. Like I kind of
Mm,
feel like when a reader gets to a major twist or a surprise, if they then go back and reread the book, it should be obvious. Like everything is there, but sometimes I kind of feel like the authors really just like keep you completely blind until all of a sudden they're
yeah.
like, and then this happened, and you're like, what? How am I supposed to guess this? You know what I mean? I always kind of feel like twists are best when they're earned, and for me, it's
Mm,
always a cheat when there's just zero way you could possibly even predict something like, the twist. So like when you're approaching your books, is that something that you kind of keep in the back of your head about like, maybe like having these red herrings or like feeding out this little info here and there? Like how do you typically approach with like twists and surprises and everything else?
Well, I pants my books. I don't plot them and I don't outline them. So sometimes it's a matter of going back afterward and sort of seeding it throughout. And sometimes I have seeded it and I actually come to the conclusion like, oh, this is the twist that I've been writing this whole time, and this is how it can work. So it can work one of the two ways where I either have to seed it or when I figure out what the twist is. And halfway, three-quarters of the way, I try to have multiple twists in a book instead of just one. Certainly something at the midpoint that sort of changes the story or puts it in a new direction. And they sort of come to me as I write, and I can start to sort of go back and say, okay, how did I do this? And how did I not do this? Um, there was something I will say, like in For Your Own Good, the book I wrote about the high school teacher, there was a habit he had of biting his cuticles and picking at his cuticle, not biting them, picking at them, making them bleed. And that one little thing became very important later on, and I was able to use it in Twist. But when I wrote it, I didn't know I was going to do that. So the in what that's a case where it worked, where it was something I could use.
Right.
Um, so sometimes it works like that, and sometimes it doesn't. And someone who does this brilliantly, because I've just been reading this book, an older book. I was reading Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. And if you know the twist of that book, when you're reading it, you can see how often he is actually planting all the seeds of that twist, and yet it still feels like it comes out of nowhere when you're reading it for the first time or watching the movie for the first time.
Yeah, that's a book I've been wanting to go back to read, Shutter Island, Mystic River. My favorite of his is Darkness Take My Hand. That's what made me really like a lifelong fan. Um, he's just so
Mm.
good.
It is, and I
So
don't know how he does it. Maybe he meticulously plots his books. Maybe he goes back and puts in those little things, but they're everywhere. The clues are everywhere in that book, from like the first two pages or three pages of the book. They're everywhere, but you're not looking for that. You're not looking for that twist, so you don't know.
yeah, I think it's all about the sleight of hand. It's all about the misdirection. And yeah, I love when you're writing something and it just your subconscious or whatever it is maybe like adds a detail or sort of like a character says something that does not seem significant at the time, and then later you realize like, oh, what if? And then, all of a sudden, like I had at the time, this was a long time ago, but I had written what I thought at the time was going to be a novella, and these two guys are walking down a hallway and they pass this janitor. It's just randomly they pass this janitor. And then later something happens, and then I realized like, oh, this janitor wasn't a janitor. And then it became this like 100,000 word book because from just like this little thing where just the story just kind of went crazy. Um, and I probably actually just like last time we discussed, but with My Lovely Wife, had you known the main twist from the beginning, or was that something? And again, I don't want spoilers, although the book's been out for quite a while now, but like, had you known what was going to happen, or was that one of those things where at the time, at the beginning, no idea?
Not when I first started writing it. No, it came to me during the course of writing it. So I don't always know the end when I start. So or I don't know what the details are when I write.
Right.
I start with a character and with a scenario and just start writing and see where it goes. And the rest of it develops along the way.
Minor spoilers here, but the midway point though of that novel where we find out the truth about like
The
was that
situation. Yeah.
was that from always in the back of your head, or was that something just as you were writing it, just all of a sudden you realize like, oh wow, and then go in that direction?
It really just happens organically. It doesn't happen like I don't think of the twist at the moment I write it, but it starts developing as I'm writing chapter by chapter. Because what I find is that when I'm writing, I try to write a chapter a day when I'm in the middle of a book. And writing each chapter opens up a bunch of new ideas. I have to actually write it though to have those ideas. I can't just sit and think and let me figure it out. I can't do that. If I write it, then I can see, oh, this opens up this path and this opens up this path. And then I write another chapter, then more comes to me. So it's very, um, which is not always the best way to write a book because sometimes it doesn't work at all. But in that's how the twists eventually come to me. I could say, oh, this can go here, and I start to see how the pieces will fall into place.
Yeah. What made you decide to reread Shutter Island? Like, how often are you going back and rereading older books?
It just depends. I actually was interested in reading something. Uh, I don't want to spoil anything, but I was interested in reading sort of how the that book in particular took place in 1954, which has, and I don't write historical novels, so I'm not writing anything that happened in 1954, but I was taking interest in forensic psychiatric hospitals, which is what we call them now. Back then they were called Hospital for the Criminally Insane. So I wanted to see how it was depicted in the 50s, and I trust that Lehane probably did some research and was, I don't know that he was accurately depicting it in the book because it was a very strange hospital, what they were doing there. So I kind of just wanted to see how that was depicted in the 50s versus how psychiatric hospitals are treated today, which is very different.
Yeah. So is that, and again, I know you probably don't want to get into it, but so is that like for a project you're working on?
Possibly. I will not
Possibly.
say 100%, but I will say possibly.
Okay. All right. Um, well, let's get to Too Old for This. So this is your fifth novel. Last time we talked, we had discussed that, well, as you mentioned before, you're more of a pantser. So you sit down, you write the book, and then you finish the book. And then you guys at that point you decide, it goes to your agent, your editor, because you've written several novels in between these five that have been published that you decided at the time were not really worth pursuing. So I guess my
Yeah.
question is, after a twisted love story, when did this idea for the new book kind of come into your head? Like, had you written other books prior to before you decided on,
There
this particular
was
one?
There was at least one other that I wrote and threw out. That's the kind of the problem with being a pantser is it doesn't always work, and sometimes it's so bad that there's no fixing it, and sometimes it would just require complete rewrites. And when it gets to that point, I tend to just throw it out because it feels to me like it just maybe the idea was great, but I'm not the one to execute it, or the way that I'm trying to execute it is not working somehow. So a great idea has to have great execution, or else it's just not a good book. So I know that I wrote one other in between, and then I wrote this one. Too old for this, yeah.
And are you writing the entire novel or are you getting like 30, 50 page or 30, 50,000
Done
words
both.
in, 6,000 words in and realize like it's
I
not worth
did.
pursuing?
No, I wrote an entire novel and I thought it was good. And it my agent did not agree. So I rather than there were ways to fix it perhaps, but I didn't see it and I couldn't envision it, and I was I just said okay, no. And that was a little bit more of an experimental novel as well. That was not a just more of a straightforward thriller like I normally write. That one had more speculative aspects to it. So clearly, I have not mastered that. So I went back and decided, okay, I'm going to write a thriller. And I had started writing actually, this one started out differently and started out with a much younger female protagonist. And I really wasn't feeling it like it was starting to be more of sort of a female revenge serial killer thriller, and I wasn't really feeling strongly about it. And I heard or read a story about a serial killer that had retired, and I believe it was the Golden State Killer. He had retired from serial killing because he had just gotten too old to do it. And that was just something I had never thought of before. Like, if you didn't get caught and you're still alive and you're an aging serial killer, what do you do? Well, sometimes they just retire. They just get tired and they don't have the strength or the desire to go kill anymore, I guess. So I thought, what a fantastic idea. And so I turned my young woman into an older woman and she became my retired serial.
So did you have to go back and rewrite for the voice? Because
Oh
the
yeah, it
specific
was
voice
complete.
for the,
Yeah,
yeah.
completely. I wasn't that far into it, so it wasn't like a big. So I hadn't written like a whole book or anything. I was only a couple chapters into it when I changed. So luckily, there wasn't a lot to. I just restarted it.
And so you said that you try to write about a chapter a day when you're working on a book. This particular book has a little over 70 chapters in it. So when you are working on a novel, um, and this one, I think at least I listened to the audiobook. The audiobook was about 10 hours or so, so it's probably like 100,000 words long. Does that sound about right?
Not quite. No, and none of mine are 100,000. So it'd be somewhere between 85 and 90.
Okay. So I guess the question is when you are working on a novel, like when you sit down and you start chapter one, how long does it typically take you then to get to, at least for your first draft, to the end of the book? Like are you trying to write every day? And then when
I
you are
write every
writing, are
day.
you going back and like rereading, revising what you wrote the previous day? Or are you doing kind of the Nora Roberts vomit draft, just straight through and then worry about everything at the end and go back through it then?
I do write every day, 7 days a week, so a chapter a day. I edit as I go. I do not vomit draft. I cannot stand the idea of having a completely disorganized mess at the end because that just offends my OCD or whatever. So I have to go back, and if I change something in the middle, like somebody dies or lives or whatever, I go back and change the previous chapters. So I will edit those and continue, and then there are entire chapters I delete as well. Like I think, oh no, that was the wrong direction yesterday what I wrote, so I'm rewriting that 1,000 words. This book took me, and then I will revise at the end. So when I finish, I have a fairly clean draft because I've edited as I go, and then I will put it down for a couple weeks and then pick it up and do final revisions before I send it to my editor or my agent. This one, I want to say, this one went fairly fast. I want to say in total 4 to 4.5 months. So I usually like to have 6 months, and that gives me cushion to be able to put it down for, because if I'm writing 1,000 words a day, theoretically, I have 90,000 words in 3 months. Realistically, I don't because I rewrite stuff and I take it out as I go. And so I would say, yeah, between 4 and 5 months is usually um like I would feel comfortable with that. Six is better, but between 4 and 5 would be okay.
Yeah. And then for the chapters that you end up deleting, do you at least save those just to have for in the future? You know, sometimes,
Um,
if like they want to do like, like bonuses, like, oh, this is a deleted chapter as a bonus or something, like, or are they gone?
I'm a notorious deleter. I will keep them until I'm sure I won't change my mind on that particular thing. But even then, I usually rewrite it. I usually don't just copy and paste back into the book. So yeah, I pretty much at the end I delete because I'll go through. I usually have I have my book, which is in one Word document, and then I have a second document, which is notes, and that's where I'll put my character names so I don't forget them, and I put little like red hair, anything I put in that could be used as a red herring. I start to keep a list so I know whether or not to circle back to it or not. And then if I take out a chapter, I will paste it in that as well. And then I go through that and say, am I going to use that? No. And then I'll delete it. I'll just delete it out. So I keep my notes edited too.
So, I want to jump back real quick to that other book that you wrote, this speculative. Can you talk a little bit, at least, because I'm just curious, like, was it more like sci-fi, horror, fantasy? Like, what were is it kind of like, I
Um,
don't know if you read like Shining Girls, like something like that type of speculative thriller?
um, it was a it was not sci-fi. It was a book where the characters were aware they were characters in a book.
Well, okay.
So there was a self-awareness there, and that I was the writer. So I had a third person role in my own book.
Well, that's
So,
exciting.
but
Sounds great.
but yeah, sounds good and sounded great. Yeah, so it just didn't pan out very well. Apparently, the way I executed it just didn't. That was It was a great idea, but maybe one day again I'll try to write it. There's been lots of books out there where I mean there's other books where characters
Yeah.
come to life and it wasn't something totally novel that had never been done before. But I was just thinking the thriller with characters who find out they're in a thriller or characters that figure out that they're characters in thriller and trying to figure out the best way to like make that happen. Like what happens if the writer dies mid-book? What happens to the characters? Kind of a thing.
Yeah. All right. So for Too Old for This, it just came out in paperback. You have a copy there you want to hold up again? Because I don't know if anybody. Oh,
It's such a great cover.
yeah, that really is a good cover. How many like was that the initial one that they came through with you, or were there other? Because I don't want to say necessarily iconic, but now if I think about this book, that is the perfect that's the perfect cover for it.
They sent me three covers, but they say which one is your favorite, and it was just overwhelming. Like everybody loved this one. There was another one that was really beautiful that also had a hammer in it, but it didn't have the woman figure in it, and it was sort of to me when I looked at this book, what I love in a cover is a cover that lets me know exactly what kind of book it is. Is it thriller? Is it a Western? Is it a rom-com or whatever? Because if I'm um, looking at them in a bookstore or looking at them online and I'm only seeing a thumbnail, I want to know that the book, I don't want to think it's one thing and then I end up buying it and it's a completely different book. So I think that the best thing we can do for readers is make the covers let the reader know what you're getting. So when you look at this, this is about a violent older woman. That's what this is about. She has a black glove on. She's hiding a hammer behind her back. She has the gray hair. If this is not the kind of book you want, then don't buy it. So I think that that very simply and very clearly depicts exactly what you're going to get in this book. It doesn't misrepresent it in any way. And so that's the kind of cover that I love.
And it's a great title too. Was that was there
Too old for this.
another title initially, or from the bat was
Nope,
this what the title was?
that that was it. For most of my books, I came up with the titles and I try to come up with common phrases that are then a little twisted when it's a cover, whether it's my lovely wife or for your own good. And in this, given her age, too old for this. That's a very common phrase. I'm too old for this or whatever. So I thought, what a perfect title for this, that she's, a serial killer coming out of retirement and she's, I'm too old for this. So it just sounded so perfect for it. And so as soon as I said it, my editor was like, yes, that's it.
So all right, so you talk about that this one came about pretty fast, I guess, compared to your other books. When you do the writing, because I listened to the audiobook, we talked a little bit in the green room about the audiobook narrator is fantastic. And again, who is she again? You mentioned.
Elizabeth Wiley is her name, and she is fantastic. Yes.
Do you are you an audiobook fan? I mean, do you like read your stuff aloud? Are you very aware how a book will also play in audio? Because I feel like sometimes writers don't really think so much about the audio kind of version. So like, is that something that you kind of keep in the back of your head, or like as you're editing, do you also maybe read it aloud as you go?
I do a little bit more now. I didn't used to at all, because there was never a time when I could really listen to audio. I mean, when I listen to audiobooks, the only time I truly listen to stuff is like at the gym. I don't drive that much. I don't commute. If I commuted, I would probably would, while I'm sitting in traffic, in California traffic, I would listen to an audiobook. But since I don't commute on a daily basis, I don't have that opportunity. So I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks. But I'm trying to get more into reading my book out loud so I can hear it out loud or to say it out loud. So I think with the popularity of audiobooks now, I'm more aware of how it might sound in an audiobook.
Yeah. I know this just recently came out in paperback. Obviously, it came out last year, so I don't want to do any really spoilers.
Hmm.
But I do want to ask you, how do I want to say it? Because I don't want to have any spoilers. Like, there's a lot of different stories going on here. It's kind of like a present day story, and then there's kind of like past day because like kind of her past is kind of coming back to haunt her in a way. Did you, again, is this one of those things like when you started this book, how much did you really sense at that point? And again, I'm assuming because again, as a pantser, a lot of this kind of came about as you were writing it. But at what point or how far into the book did all the different puzzle pieces really start kind of clicking into place for you? Because everything does wrap up very nicely at the end, I must say.
Yeah, this one I had a very clear vision for the story that she was a retired serial killer. She didn't kill anymore, but then somebody comes to her door threatening to blow up her quiet life. And she is dragged out of retirement and has to start killing. And once she kills one, it starts a whole parade of consequences from that one killing that goes on and becomes more serious the more it goes on. Um, so I wasn't sure how it was going to end. So I did have a couple different endings for it before we came up with the one that it ended up with. So I won't spoil anything. But I had that clear vision of exactly what was going on in Lottie's life and what started the story. And the starting of the story was somebody knocking on the door, threatening to blow up her life, basically, and threatening to out her in the public.
Yeah. Are you not a fan of emojis? No, the reason I say is because that came up in the book where somebody had texted and she's like, "Oh, he uses emojis. This is worse than I thought," or something like that. I laughed out loud. It was very
I
funny.
would think, well, to me, Lottie would hate. I don't hate emojis. I don't use them a whole lot, but the uh, Lottie just is someone that would hate emojis. Just, say the words. She doesn't, and she likes would rather speak than text, but she has to text at some point. So yeah, it just seemed like something Lottie would really hate is this whole emoji thing. Like, why do you are using a cartoon instead of words?
Yeah, and again, the audiobook was great. The narrator, she does do a really good job.
Yes.
Is there, so at this point, you're working on another book. Nothing has been set. There's no like another book for pre-order because you've been, is it like every other year now you have a book come
It's
out
usually
on?
every other year, but
Yeah.
I don't have one for next year. So sure. Knocking over my microphone. I'm not sure
Sorry.
when, but I don't have one coming out next year.
Okay. But you are doing some type of research because you have been rereading Shutter Island, so we know that there's something that potentially could take place a long time ago or whatever else.
There's
I like
always
that idea too.
potentially
I
lots of
I
things.
agree with you too. Like when it comes to research, I like reading the books by authors who have done probably more research than me, if that makes sense, than kind of doing the research myself.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting in terms of psychiatric hospitals because there's so many methods they used back in the 50s that we don't use anymore. And they didn't have the same type of pharmaceuticals back then that we have now, which is what everything is directed towards. They, gave people lobotomies back then, and we don't do that anymore. So the it was just interesting to see how it was treated and how the patients were treated in how that was addressed by a fiction writer in trying to be sensitive to mental disorders, because he's, you know, writing it in modern day, even though it's in the 50s, and a lot of these people are very sick and through no fault of their own and have schizophrenia and what have you. So trying
Yeah.
to keep a balance there of how to not make an insensitive thriller that's not going to take into account that there really are very sick people out there, and the people sent to these hospitals are people that are incompetent to stand trial and not guilty by reason of insanity. And we see that whole trial going on right now with Lindsay Clancy, who is claiming not guilty by reason of insanity. So it's interesting.
I'm not familiar with that case. What's that one about?
Oh, she killed her children,
Oh, right, right,
and then
right,
she
right,
tried
right.
to
Okay.
she tried to commit suicide. She's actually paralyzed now because
Mm.
she jumped out a window.
Are there other, I'm trying to think of, are there other books, I don't want to say necessarily similar to Shutter Island, but certain ones that take place long ago that deal with kind of the mental health and the quote unquote
And
insane asylums?
another one. Well, it wasn't an insane asylum, but a psychiatric hospital was Girl Interrupted, which was also
Oh,
made into
yeah.
a movie. Yeah. But that was not a forensic
Yeah, that was more like,
psychiatric institution.
and
Oh,
that was
what
more nonfiction
One
though,
Flew Over
right?
the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh,
Obviously, One Flew
yeah.
Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah. So,
But nothing
um,
really thriller-esque. You know what I mean? Like Shutter Island was the only one that was more like kind of thriller that comes to mind.
mhm.
Huh, it's interesting. All right. Well, so you mentioned before about what you had been watching. Anything else besides Shutter Island? Anything else you've been reading or listening to that you really enjoy that you would recommend to anybody?
Let's see. Well, I am a personal fan. I'm sure everybody knows this and everybody's reading it. Love the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I read all eight twice, so I'm a huge fan.
Really?
Um,
You read it? I mean, I have the first two audiobooks. I know I hear like the audiobooks great. I actually met Matt. Was it last year? I was at this thing and he was there and he came up because it was like this conference or whatever convention. I had a table there and he comes up. I didn't realize who he was until after the fact. We were chatting. And for some reason, I don't know, like, but he was a very, 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 very nice guy.
yeah, he seems like just a regular. I really admire that he was just, you know, sitting there writing what he loved and putting it out there, self-publishing it, and it, you know, got such a huge following. He was just, you know, he's not a celebrity. I mean, he's a celebrity author now, I guess what you would consider him to be,
Yeah,
but,
he was at
you know, just
Comic-Con
for
because they're making a
years,
TV show. And yeah,
yeah, but for years was just sitting in his house doing his thing, writing these RPG type thriller books, lit RPG or whatever the subgenre is, and happened to write something that captured such a huge audience. Yeah, I don't typically read lit RPG books, but I loved these. I thought they were great. So, you know, definitely crossed a lot of genres into lots of genres there.
yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting how books just sometimes take off. Sometimes, like a
Mhm.
publisher might pay a shitload of money for a book, put so much marketing into it, have them go everywhere, and it just doesn't catch on. And sometimes really, really great books just don't find an audience. And then it's just, yeah, it's really weird that then sometimes certain books, and yeah, it's great. Again, Matt's a really nice guy, and clearly he's very talented and just found a huge, huge audience because yes, those books, every bookstore I go, in fact, I was in a Barnes& Noble just yesterday. He had his own little table there just stacked with the hardcovers of all those books.
Yeah, they're great. I can't argue with it at all. I thought they were a lot of fun
Yeah.
and
And then,
just a great distraction. The books that are just a great take you to literally another world. So it's great.
yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's nowadays, I mean, oftentimes people read because they want to escape. And sometimes,
Hmm.
especially for someone like me who at Thriller Fest a couple years ago, a woman came up to me because she had written like a political thriller and just our current political climes is, she was like, how she had been working on this book And then just with the way things were in our politics and the world, she was like, I can't, it's not going to work anymore. Like, what can I do? And I'm like, I have no good answer for you. Like,
Yeah.
writing political, and I've talked to other writers who have written political stuff where, I mean, do you remember, like, I don't know, do you ever watch any of like the old Tom Clancy, like, Clear and Present Danger, where
Oh yeah,
literally
I read all
the
those.
mo yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
And the
literally the whole thing like hinged on the fact that, oh, if the truth comes out, the country is not going to stand up for it, and this congressman or whoever was the president like is going to have to resign in disgrace, and it's like that would never happen nowadays.
yeah, no, no, not at all. And there was always Tom Clancy books were great. And there was always like you always knew who the villain was, even if you didn't know who the person was. It was always like it's Russia. Like Russia this has the nuke or it's gonna explode the nuke or whatever. And now it's just too divisive. So and I think reading about a political thriller just makes people think about real life, and that's maybe not what people are looking for. So
Yeah. Although I do think that if you're writing political thrillers nowadays, it is it's not, I mean, writing is always hard, and obviously it becomes more of a challenge to try to come up with something that, would still work. Because again, a lot of the old stuff that you would rely on, like, I don't want to get too political here, but like a president that is somewhat, good or something like whereas, like you would, I don't know, like there's always corruption in terms of these political thrillers, but like in terms of like real world corruption nowadays, it just boggles, it's insane.
yeah. Or just even the concept of an election. The concept of an election can make a great thriller no matter what. I mean, it's just there's a ticking clock element of when the election happens. There's rival parties or rival candidates. I mean, all of that can make for great drama, I mean, even the teenage movie Election, the one with Reese Witherspoon and the infamous movie. It's just an election of any kind, whether it's for the school board or the presidency, is just a great setup. But nowadays, they're talking about elections like year round, like we're having them all the time. I mean, if people don't want to read about elections, I can't imagine. You'd have
Did
to, it would have to take place in another like fantasy world or something. I wouldn't go near it now because it's just too close to
yeah.
what we hear about all the time.
Did you read the sequel to Election, the Tracy Flick
No,
something? I forget what it's called. Tracy
Tracy
Flick Must
Flick,
Win?
something.
Must Win? No, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the one. Yeah, I was curious. I've been, it's on my list to go get to, but of course, huge, huge, huge list right now of books. So yeah, I can't think if there's anything else right now. Anything you want to talk about? Anything else you want to get off your chest? I don't know.
Oh, another book I just got it, but I haven't started it yet, is Marion by Leah Rowan.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's the one that's about Marion from movie Psycho.
Yeah.
So she wrote a book about Marion Crane. I don't know if she uses the same name, but it's called Marion. So it's an alternate version of what happened at the hotel, at a hotel, like a psycho hotel. And she doesn't die in the shower. So because she ends up killing her attacker. Um,
I
so I
I
thought that
have
was a great idea to write a book from Marion's perspective.
yeah, I haven't, I mean, I've of course heard the book. I haven't read it and I haven't really looked into it, but has the novel been out long? I mean, it's not considered the public domain. I'm just curious, like, how she got away with doing that because it's
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the I know that when I read the back of it, it doesn't use the same name. Its name is not
okay.
Norman
So maybe it's
Bates.
that
It's
whole
like
like it's like
Norm
inspired, like we all know it's based
inspired
on this,
by,
but
I guess.
technically for legal
Yeah.
purposes, we can't say it's that. Yeah.
Yeah, his
Have
name
you
was
ever
something
read
like
Psycho?
Norm Billings. No, I've not read the book.
Yeah, I have it. I've been meaning to get to it, and it's one of those
Yeah.
things too. Because I hear it's great. I had heard that Hitchcock, when the movie came out, and I don't know how accurate this is, but supposedly he tried to buy every single copy. So nobody would read it and get, spoil it because of obviously with the
Yeah,
movie.
sure.
Because the really interesting thing is, and I think they always call it like a like a mid movie twist or like a mid book twist. Because it was, the setup is you think it's going to be one thing, and then it becomes a completely different thing. Basically, who everyone thinks is going to be the main, our protagonist essentially dies, like what was it, a
Right.
half hour into it or whatever else, which is one of those things that doesn't happen often in movies and books or whatever, but usually when it's done really well, it's done really, really well.
Hmm. And you need to, at that point, pass it off to a more interesting character, which is because you don't want people so attached to that character in the first half hour that they're like, well, wait, what happened? I don't want to watch this now or read this or what have you. But passing it off to Norman and the other characters was great.
Yeah, there's another, where's the book? I have it over here in my office somewhere. Did you ever read Julia Haberlin's We Are All the Same in the Dark?
Mm-mm. Is it good?
Yes, but it has that type of thing too, where there's a couple different characters, and I don't want to give too much away, but it's very, very well done. But Samantha, it's always a pleasure to hang out and discuss. Hold up that book again. The paperback just came out.
Yay.
Too old for this. Great cover, great book. Definitely check it out, everyone, in paperback, or check out the audiobook too, because the audiobook is fantastic. I have to check
Yeah.
out too that narrator again. That was the very first time I had heard, I think, that narrator. I'd be very curious to see what other, books that she's done. Because
Mhm.
she definitely has like, an older woman voice. So unfortunately, she probably gets very pigeonholed into certain types of books that she can narrate. But
Yeah.
yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah. I agree.
And then so you are not going to be, you're not really on. Are you doing any like events for the paperback now that's out?
No, I didn't have any scheduled for it, just some
Uh,
podcasts and stuff online, but
no signings or anything.
nope.
Okay. Well, thank you for making time to hang out here.
Oh,
Looking
but I
forward
will
to,
say
yes,
I
yes.
I did sign books at my local bookstore, so you can order them from there if anybody wants a signed book from Book Passage in Corte Madera, California. So if you can find them on Instagram at Book Passage or online Book Passage in California.
And if people want to find you online, where's the best way to do that?
SamanthaDowning.com, and I've got links there to my social media.
Okay. All right. Well, again, Samantha, thank you so much for hanging out. And everyone go check out Samantha's new book or newest book, and then also all of her other books. She has a lot of great books out there. So and then go reread Shutter Island because Dennis Lehane really needs our support as well. So all right, let me turn this off. So again, thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see everybody next time. Bye.